Greetings to those who are confined behind the walls of their home, like me. Welcome to Groove with Portia, QuaranTOLD edition. I'm your host, Portia Booker, and yes, this is my real name. Groove with Portia targets those who are curious, eager, and hungry for new information that can aid in their personal and professional development. Malcolm X once said, "Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today." Never stop learning. Be a sponge for the rest of your life. Before I jump into my topic for today, I want to introduce my guests. Welcome Miss E.W. Brooks, author of Mafietta, joining me remotely. Welcome E.W. Brooks, how are you?
I'm doing well, glad to be here. How are you?
Living the dream, ma'am, every day through quarantine and all, right?
Right, glad to be here.
So you're in Korea, right?
Right.
And so how is COVID doing over there? Like, is there a lot of restrictions? Are places kind of opening back up?
Unlike some of the things that I'm hearing back in the States, from maybe mid-January up until Wednesday of this week, actually, we were kind of sheltered in place. We only went outside for essentials. We wore our masks, we sanitized our hands, and we did that from mid-January until mid-May. And yesterday was the first time my family went outside as a family unit and sat down in a Korean restaurant and had Korean barbecue. So because we listened for about 3 months and didn't do anything, we were able to enjoy some of those freedoms. So I just wish more people at home would kind of just stay in place a little while longer. So things will be a little better when you finally do go back outside.
Absolutely. And when you were in this restaurant, did everybody have on masks or I'm sure that they maybe only allowed a certain amount of people in. Like, how did it look as far as when you were in there, capacity wise?
Korea has handled things a whole lot differently than the U.S. Like in Korea, because it's the size of Indiana. So if somebody popped up with the virus, they would tell you the last 5 places they've been, who they came in contact with, because they do everything with CCTV. So the experience was totally different here than what you all are dealing with. So when people are out in public, they have their masks on. But in the restaurant, it was definitely mask off. Each table had hand sanitizer. Each table had hand wipes. And people were seated maybe every other table. So, everybody was socially distanced. But other than that, it was a very normal experience.
Okay. I mean, that's good. At least, you were kind of able to get out for a minute after being, confined.
Yeah, almost felt normal.
Right. Almost is the key word there.
Yeah.
Here in Ohio, they, they're going to allow people to still have wedding ceremonies with up to 300 something people. And, there's a lot of mixed emotions about that. I mean, me personally, if I was supposed to get married this year, I'd postpone it. I'd just do a whole courthouse thing, save the reception for, 2021 or 22 when I could be surrounded with all of my guests. I mean, to me, 300 is a lot of people to, depending on how big your family is and stuff. But even still, I mean, you can't have, catering, I guess. You can't have a DJ with dancing. It's like, what's the point? You may as well do a virtual wedding and, with that.
Yeah, not put your grandma and them, at risk. You know what I mean? Like, especially the elderly population. I don't know.
See, if I was going to attend a wedding this year, I would probably have on a hazmat suit.
I just asked somebody to hold up their camera phone to see if I could just watch it from Zoom or something. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the new way that I think things should be, at least for the rest of, 2020. My aunt passed away about 2 months ago, God rest her soul. And they were allowed to still have a ceremony here in Cleveland. But my uncle had told me that they kind of had the first row of the church pews empty. Then the second row, they had one person at the end, one person in the middle, and then one person on the end. Then they did another skipper row. And I'm just thinking, dag, you may as well have a service outside in the parking lot. I mean, safer there. Just stream it through, like you said, either using a platform such as Skype or Zoom. People can just watch it from their cars. I mean, I know church services, some of them are doing that.
Right.
Allowing people to help, watch it from the parking lot or even, remotely through the computer. That's what me and my mom did for Easter. We watched it remotely. So, there's more creative ways to me to.
It is. And I just want everybody to be safe. It's scary. And just looking at the numbers, that's truly frightening. It's scary.
It's scary. And, when are things going to, I guess, go back to being semi-normal where, we can go outside and go to the beaches. And, here we also have the amusement park, Cedar Point. And they're losing a ton of money right now because, the park is normally open by now. It's booming. They get kind of like Disney World. They get an influx of people that, come.
That should tell everybody how serious it is. If Disney World is closed, y'all, and it's not open back up, then that should tell you where you should be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I tell people, if you want your, I guess, amusement park thrill, this gives you time to be creative. Create your own little, I guess, makeshift amusement park in your backyard. I've seen people do it. Like I just saw an article, I think on TMZ, where a grandfather built his grandson a little roller coaster ride out of wood in his backyard. And I just said, oh, that's so cute. Now, how has COVID been for you, EW? Obviously we're all been in the house, but, do you feel kind of like a creative spark that has come through for you? Do you feel like the social distancing is affecting you a lot?
For me, it was empowering because one, I was able to do more writing. I was able to get a book written during this time. And also, as a mother with a school-age child, though, it allowed me to sit down with my son and figure out ways that he learned best. So it allowed me to see what some of his weaknesses were in school. It allowed me to say, wait a minute, like my son is really smart, but if I did a little more at home, I thought I was doing enough at home, but it allowed me to see places that I could improve the way that I helped him at home. So just working with him at home allowed me to help him, go from reading on his grade level to reading above his grade level. So in that aspect, it was empowering just to see his growth in his schoolwork. So I was happy to see that growth in my child and just, to kind of spend some more time with him too. So that felt good. And then just to have that creative spark reignite itself, that was good too, because it was like you can't have this time and not just kind of take advantage of it, because after the rest, after the recuperation, it's like, okay, you got to do something with this. Like you're sitting there and you're like literally twiddling your thumbs like, okay, what do we do? And then when it hits you, you move.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And, I like what you said about being able to spend more time with your son. I don't think people realize how busy our lives are Monday through Friday. If you're a working parent, you figure you have to go to work, you have to get your kid ready for school. Then once you drop your kid off from school, you go to work. When you come home from work, you got to make dinner, help the kid with their homework. Don't get a phone call while you're at work that your kid is sick at school or they're acting up, Right. So people don't realize just how much time that is being consumed with other things, not with our family, not with the things that we enjoy to do. So right. I really applaud you saying that. I don't have any kids, but honestly, COVID has been wonderful for me. Like when you said that creative spark, I've been feeling it like an IV just got jammed into my freaking, arm, and just creative juices just going in 24/7, I've been working on my podcast. I also work with several other people's radio shows and podcasts. I help produce theirs. So, I'm able to give so much of my creative outlet, not just to them, but also to myself as well. I also started a new diet, which has been wonderful. It's been challenging, but, with any new... with any new diet, there comes meal restrictions. You have to increase, your water intake, less carbs, include more exercise. So for me, it's been a whole, I guess, transformational period for me. and I've really
Mm-hmm.
thrived from it. So
Right.
honestly, COVID came at the right time for me. So
I hear you.
so you said you've been working on a new book. I mean, what's the title? Maybe when is it going to be coming out for your, your fans who are like sitting at the edge of their seat waiting?
Well, it came out. It launched on Amazon this week on the 21st, my nephew's birthday. I was like, what date means something to me? You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, it's my nephew's birthday this week. So I did a pre-launch last week for like some friends and family because I wanted to get um some real reviews because I knew that if anybody in the world was gonna keep it real, it would be my friends and family. So I did like a real quiet launch and and had them purchase some books and was able to get some feedback. And I liked what I heard, so I launched on Amazon on the 21st. And I've been real happy with the results so far. But the name of the book is Brooks versus Damon Dash: The Unauthorized Taking of Mafietta. And it was one of the shortest books I've ever written, but it was one of the hardest books I've ever written. But now that it's done, I can take a breath, breathe, and be glad that I've told a story that I think one, people will enjoy reading, but two, something that creatives, people that write books, people that make films, people that put projects out into the world. I think it's something that they all can take something from.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's to me, that's the purpose of being, an artist and an author. You're sharing your experience in order to help other people. Because that's
Right.
all. That's what it's about, right? Giving back, helping others, and going forward. I'm excited to dive into that. I mean, like I said, I thank you for coming on and being my guest. So, look,
Thank you.
look. I mean, hey, I feel like right now in 2020, despite COVID, there's so much we can be thankful for. Like this creative spark that you got, this
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to share what you went through in order to, give other artists, filmmakers, producers, authors, some avenues, you know, some hard lines, ways to do stuff,
Right.
because you figure the internet is full of all types of resources, and some are, I'm sure you can
It is.
agree, not credible. Some of them are just far-fetched, like, who came up with this? Did this come out of a Cracker Jack box? Like, you know?
Right.
So I really appreciate that. I need to get my butt in gear and work on my books because, you know,
Do that. Yes.
I'm really excited about having this conversation because that way I always take something from my interviewees that I have, my guests,
Mm-hmm.
um, because I'm a firm believer in life is too short. My goal is to learn something new every day, and I share it. That's why I love doing
Right.
this. I love doing my podcast
Wow.
to help other people, you know? So I need people like you to share your knowledge with the world, right? Share it with
Yes, ma'am. I'm
me,
glad to
share it
do
with,
it. Glad to do it.
So, EW, what sparked your interest in becoming an author?
So like from the time I was really small, like writing was something that just came naturally. Like, and I think I can kind of attribute it to my grandmother. She was a former school teacher, and she used to write me letters. So I learned very, like second and third grade, I was getting stamps from my dad to mail my grandmother letters back. So like writing is just something that I guess she kind of instilled in me to kind of get out how I was feeling or what was going on. So writing is something that always came naturally. And then, just living life and making good decisions and bad decisions, right? Um, my friends would say, "Girl, you should write a book," and it was always like a joke. And I remember being in college and taking my English class, and my professor pulling me to the side and saying, "You should write. Like you've got something. You should write." And it's just one of those things. Like, yeah, okay, can I go now? Right? So, um, it was really like that. So, fast forward, I married my husband. Well, I wrote some thoughts down. I get married. Fast forward, my husband and I are moving. He's at work. We hadn't really found a house yet, so I'm sitting in this hotel room while while we're looking for a home. He's at work. I'm pregnant, and I'm writing. So we move, and I find my journal. And when I found my journal, the new book that I was writing mirrored the same thing that was in the journal that I had started writing years ago. And I'm like, okay, this is what I need to be writing, because this is the idea. This is the theme that won't leave me. Like, this is it. And when I had something, and there have been times in my life where things have just stuck with me and wouldn't go away. And those were the things that I stuck with, and those were the things that I did. So this was something I'm like, okay, if this has stuck with me for this long, this is something I need to move on. So when I got started on, on actually writing the book, I wrote it in less than a month. It didn't take me very long to even get the first book done. And then from there, like, as I was writing the book, I literally saw, the plot and everything happening in my head. And I'm like, I want this to be a film. Like, this has to be on TV. So, like, from that point, it was my goal to adapt my book to film. And everything I did from that point was to make that happen. But it literally started from there. It was an idea, it was a thought that wouldn't go away. I put it down, I started writing again, it came right back the same way. So it was just something that wouldn't go away. And then from there, I knew what it had to be.
And that's funny you say that. It's that nagging, like that you need to get it out, share it. That's what they say about writing in general. You get that word or that phrase, something that just keeps going, knock, 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 knock,
Right.
knock. So I'm glad that you acted upon that, and the fact that you found that notebook where you started writing,
Yes.
some time ago. I mean, so I guess it was destiny, right?
I feel like that. Then, and even after everything I've been through, I feel like it's still my destiny. It's still in my path to get this thing done. Like, that's just, it's for me to do that.
I hear that. So for our listeners who may not be familiar with your series, Mafietta, can you tell them a little bit about it?
Mafietta is about a professional woman who falls for a guy from the other side of the tracks. And he just challenges her to examine a completely different side of her life. And she changes in ways she never thought she could, or she never thought she would, to save his empire and to kind of clean him up and clean up his lifestyle to make him a more acceptable individual in the eyes of, common folk.
Common. I
Yeah.
mean, I read, a little bit about your book series, and I'm like, wow, I'm really intrigued. I want to read it now.
Yay! Do that.
I mean, I like reading. Mostly I do a lot of audiobooks because I'm always, doing producing stuff. But I do like sometimes holding that paper in hand book. The tablet doesn't always do it for me.
I hear you.
Maybe
and like there's so anytime you hear about, like, the gangster type story, it's usually from the perspective of a man. So, after seeing so many, like, you just look at the newspaper, you see so many men getting caught up, just in this or that or the other. I'm like, what would a woman do? You know what I mean? How would a woman handle this? So I kind of wrote the book from that perspective. Like, what would a woman do? And that was the kind of that was the take I played it, for the first couple of books, and then from there, she cleaned everything up, and they, began a legitimate lifestyle. But of course, with some twists and turns. But that was the idea behind Mafietta.
Well, don't give away the twists and turns. Let's have our listeners tune in so that way they can find them themselves. Leave a little.
You got it.
Leave a few breadcrumbs outside the door. So let's back up a minute. So you knew that you wanted to turn this idea into a film. So once you completed the book series, how did you kind of get connected with Damon Dash from there?
Okay, so I'm from a really small town in North Carolina. 2 stoplights. And beside that 2 stoplight town is a town that's like 16,000 people, like not much bigger, right? And I happened to be going home, and I heard that he was having a seminar in this town with 16,000 people. And my first thought is, what in the world is Damon Dash doing in a town with 16,000 people? But I felt like, okay, I had just seen the Breakfast Club interview. He was talking about investing in women. He had just done a movie. And I'm like, well, maybe he could have some kind of interest in my movie. Like, I don't want to wonder what could happen. Let's just go see. So I paid the $50. I went. I had my two little books in hand. My hands were shaking. I was scared to death, girl. Had on my little Mafietta t-shirt. Um, I go sit down, it was like, what's your business and how can I help you? Like, very laid back, just cool. And I get up there and I'm so nervous I can't even talk. Like, you know what I mean? Like my voice is trembling. I just had to stop. I'm like, y'all, I'm tired. Like I just couldn't even talk in the beginning. And he was take your time, like it's okay. So then I explained, okay, look, I have two books. I've already adapted into a film. I've already filmed this before, but I want to do it in a way that's television ready because I want to see my baby on TV. I have my own money. The script is ready. I know you're big on people having their own money. I have my own money. The script is ready. I just need mentorship and a cosign because I'm tired of people taking my money. I need to spend money in a way that gives me a product that's ready for TV. So he says, you got your script, you got your merchandise, you got your book series. And then he tells the audience, see, she has something tangible. She's ready for business. I'll help her. That's what business is about, being ready
Right.
for somebody to step in and help you. So I'm all excited. I get up and start walking to my seat. And he's like, but I got to direct it. I'm like, what? But I have a director. And he's like, but I have to direct it. I'm like, okay. Okay. So, like within 2 weeks, we were in pre-production. Things started moving. Things were going. A couple of days before production, I gave him my contract. He said it looks great. Not a problem. I'll sign it and get it back to you. Little trust in me doesn't see the issue here because you said you're gonna sign it, and I believe you, right? So start spending money. Hey, don't forget the contract. Oh, no problem, I got it. So I'm spending money, just keep spending money. And I don't get the contract back. So we're on set, we're filming, and my line producer takes him the contract. He gives her the business. Um, I'm in my creative mode. How dare you bring me a contract? I'm not signing this now. I mean, he had her. I'm giving you the PG version of what she dealt with. She came to me crying. I'm really scaling this back. So the long short of that is I didn't get my contract signed at that time, and I'm bringing that up. This is the first time I've told it this way, but that's the way it happened because I want you and other creatives to understand. And I'm sure as a producer, but I want other creatives to understand. Since we're talking about this from a teaching perspective, is like it doesn't matter when you're working with people that you admire. It doesn't matter when you're working with people that you've respected and people that you've seen on TV and people that have worked with people that you see as celebrities or that you consider moguls. It doesn't matter what they say when they shake your hand. It doesn't matter what they say when they're holding your child and then you go to dinner. It matters what happens when they sign the contract. If they don't sign that piece of paper, it does not exist. It never happened, and it is no good. So we go on and film Mafietta. I still don't have a signed contract. Mafietta we wrap it up. It's a rocky road, but we get through it. And then about November, we wrap. So it was a 3-day shoot. We wrap, in 3 days. And this was in August. And then by November, I was writing my editor to say, cease and desist with all communication with Damon about Mafietta. Don't give him my footage. He's not to, be allowed access to this project because there came a point where we just could not sit creative horses. I wasn't willing to give up creative control of my project because I've written this series of books and I knew the direction that I needed this first piece to go so that it made sense with everything that was to come after that. And him only having read the first 2 books had no understanding of that. So I wasn't willing to just give somebody creative control of my project first when I spent all the money, and 2, when I spent all the money. So it just didn't really work at that point. So um, our lawyers continued to try to negotiate a contract. Thank goodness that the contract had a work for hire provision in there. That said he was a work for hire. There was another provision in there that said anything that he contributed as a director to the project will be attributed to me, because he was a work for hire. And during the negotiation process, his lawyer never addressed those two clauses within the contract. He addressed a whole lot of other passages in the contract, but never those two clauses. So because of that, when we went to court, the judge was kind of like, well, if you address a series of other things, why did you never address these issues? He didn't really have an answer for it, nor did his attorney. And that was one thing that I would say really helped me, during court. Along with the fact that through our emails, it was clear that I never intended for him to be an owner, that I never, considered him a dominant author or co-author. So I was able to prove that this was mine and that he was to come on and work with a really hefty back end deal. But all of that is something I had to suffer through because I didn't have my business together in the beginning, because I was too trusting in the beginning. You know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with trusting people. However, it's more important to have your business together so that you're trusting the foundation of what you're building versus, something or someone you don't really know.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then for you, two things here. First, he didn't read the contract. Since he didn't sign
it. He said he read it.
Obviously, he didn't. I mean, and whoever his attorney was, how did they miss those two things? Like,
they negotiated this contract from November of 2015 until October of 2016. So they went over this contract for almost a year, and his lawyer never addressed the work for hire, and it was the other clause, and I forget the name of the clause, but he never touched it for the entire year. And that was, the basis of a lot of his questioning when his lawyer was on the stand. Like, why did you, as an attorney, never discuss these clauses? And he really didn't have an honest answer for my attorney or the judge, because the judge just started asking questions. He stopped my attorney. He just started asking questions. So I was just glad that, one, we had a judge that was so involved to the point that when he wanted an answer to a question, he would stop the attorneys and start asking questions himself. And two, that the truth was able to be figured out, that the judge thought enough of the legal process to seek out the truth.
Yeah. That's good. That's really, really good, man. I just think that's so crazy. You have a contract for this long, but you don't read a word into it. You don't go through it with a fine-tooth comb to understand, like, hello, this could be used against me in court if I get sued. So wow. Well, look, we're all human. I'm sure that you're not the first person that has gone through this. And I'm sure there's potentially other people who may be in this same boat right now. And I mean, you hit on some really strong points, to make sure that contract is signed. I mean, because we can't be too trusting. To me, being trusting when it comes to business is very hard. Unless you have that black and white piece of paper signed. I'm not dishing out anything until that's signed. But, the good thing is you were able to, you learned from it. It didn't stop you from, doing what you're doing. And the fact that you were able to produce a book, not too long ago, within the last couple, weeks or so, of this new book that you published to help other people on this road who may come across this, who may be currently in this boat. So I applaud you for that, for really coming forward. Now that the trial is over with, EW, what happened to the film that, Damon Dash produced? Did you redact it, or are you gonna like, redo it to your own style, or?
Okay, so right now, what he was never supposed to have a copy of the footage in the first place. Um and when I tell you, I literally just found out yesterday, chatting with someone on Instagram. That's when I found out for the first time how exactly he got it and who gave it to him. And it was shocking to say the least. Um, so now that it was disturbing to know how he got it. So you can tell I'm still processing that, right? Because I'm just out of words when it comes to that, because I just could not believe that's how he got it. But knowing that, and just being able to get it back, I've always had a copy of Mafietta, but the truth is, because he had put it out, when he put it out, he didn't acknowledge me as creator. He didn't acknowledge me as producer. He didn't acknowledge me as writer. He didn't acknowledge me at all. And he himself was director, period. So I was really afraid to do anything with it, even though I owned it, even though I still had all of my copy of the raw footage, and I could have extended, I could have done a web series, I could have, done any number of things with the footage I had. I was literally, before getting counsel, afraid to do anything with it because I didn't want him to come after me. So it was only after, getting attorney Chris Brown, who really took a whooping, dealing with Damon, like, did I realize, wait a minute, like, he's not the bear here. I shouldn't be afraid of him. He should be afraid of me because it's my project. So now that I know that, I am thinking about, I do want to release it in some way so that all of the people who participated in it, all the people who helped produce it can see it, because there's still some people who acted in Mafietta who haven't seen it. Um, and I do want to correct that. I do want to, have some kind of exhibition somewhere where there'll be a screening when I get back to the States or something, so that they can actually see their work. Um, and then from there, it's really about just taking the full feature script that I have and creating my baby my way as I saw it. But I do want to do something, just so that the people who work so hard to put that together can see it.
Absolutely. And I agree. I'm glad that, you're taking this time to process it all and think about it, instead of just saying, trash it all,
Yeah, I don't want to do that. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
I
because
still think it's a good project. Like, even if I were to just do a web series so people can see it, I still think, like, we shot it with red cams, like it was a real official production. I think it, and it still has great production value, production quality. So I think it's something that'll still look great. So I may consider I'm just not sure. I don't want to say. There's still some space to do something with it, but regardless of whether I do that or not, I still will be producing my full feature.
I hear that, and I'll be
Yeah.
waiting because I am a
Yes,
movie
girl.
buff. I like a good series, especially with a strong woman character. I absolutely love it. I mean, that's great. So I guess now that the trial is over, you know, is Damon Dash trying to countersue, or where is he at in this picture?
Okay, so at this point, he has filed notice of appeal. Um, and that is very different from actually appealing. So let's be clear. Filing notice to appeal says, hey, we thinking about probably going appeal, maybe, I think, right? Um, but then there's the actual filings that have to take place with the court that haven't, taken place yet. So, pretty soon the rubber's going to have to meet the road, and we'll see, if he in fact, goes through with that portion. But I do want to say that in the meantime, his filing his notice to appeal won't stop me from collecting the judgment that I've been awarded. Because, I've still won. You know what I mean? So
Right.
he'll have to have the appeals court overturn Judge Rakoff's decision based on some kind of error that the judge would have made. And, after, just reviewing the case with my attorney and going back through the trial notes, just after Damon's behavior and a lot of things that happened in the courtroom, I don't see any space that Judge Rakoff could have made an error. And, when I say I mean my counsel and I, don't see room for that type of mistake. So, we're going to, of course, allow Damon to do whatever he needs to do. However, however calm, as I like to say, I'm going to be doing what I need to do as far as collecting, my judgment while he figures out whatever he wants to do on the other end.
Right. And notice of appeal, it's like, oh, I'm here to scare you. Kind of like a restraining order. That's what it seems like to me.
Right. And even crazier, and this is kind of like an exclusive, but I'll share it with you. Like even just up to maybe like last week, he reached out to the judge because he didn't want me to be able to collect because he had filed an appeal. And what the court says, if you don't want someone to be able to collect because you're filing an appeal, you have to put up a bond. So if you don't want me to collect $300,000, you need to put up a bond for $300,000. But because he's been unable to put up the bond, that means I can collect, right? So that's kind of where we are now. I just think he's just done everything he could to be difficult. He's done everything he could to stall the process, to slow it down. And for me, it's been most frustrating because, I've had to fly from Korea to New York. And we're working people. You know what I mean? But this man, complains that he can't fly from California to Boston for a deposition. I'm literally flying halfway across the world. And we go to work every day. And this man claims to be a mogul, but says he can't fly from California to Boston. So I'm just amazed at the double standard. And I'm just glad that it is nearing the end point.
Well, absolutely. Less of a headache for you. I mean, because I'm sure that this process has been very draining, stressful all around. I mean, not just to you, but to your family, potentially your, the actors and actresses who were involved in the production, along with your production crew. I mean, it sounds like it's an overall draining and terrible experience for anybody to go through.
Just hearing you say that, I just wanted to cry for like 2 seconds after you said that. It has been extremely draining. And I am just blessed to have a husband that is so supportive. And just hearing you talk about going through, transformation during this quarantine time, because, I found myself during this process becoming an emotional eater. So like, all of this trial weight, the stress of all of this trial and all of this emotional eating that I've been doing, it's time to let this weight go. It's time to shed this stuff. So like, I'm processing all of that and taking better care of me, now too, because it has indeed been stressful because there was always some kind of motion. There was always some kind of filing. There was always, Damon's not doing this. Damon refuses to provide this financial. Damon won't show the revenue from Mafietta. Damon won't do this. He's late for the deposition. I mean, from beginning to end, there's always been something, and it was stressful. And I did what I could to keep that type of information from the cast and crew as much as possible. But just internalizing it, was something that was tough. So again, my goal to me now that it's over, my promise to me is to take better care of me.
I hear that. that. Self-care is key. And, they say more room out than in is indeed a true statement, because when you're hurting on the inside, when something is stressful, if you're keeping that inside of you, it's going to hurt you. I mean,
yes.
you know,
I
when
just couldn't understand how a man that held my son, you held my son. You know what I mean? And then you take my movie and you put it out into the world and you don't even tell me.
yeah,
Like that's disrespect on a level that I'll never understand. So so yes, it hurt. But then, it came in time, I came to realize that man didn't owe me anything. That man didn't know me. You know what I mean? So, it was just a process of working through what happened and understanding that everybody is not as giving as you, Edwina. Everybody doesn't have the same heart as you, Edwina. This is a business situation and it's nothing personal. So when I had to realize it was nothing personal, I had to apply that outward, in saying, I want my money. You know what I mean? Like, let's go after this bread. So that's just going to be my attitude going forward. That was my attitude in writing my book. Like, I'm not writing my book to bash anybody, but I do want people to understand these are some things that you have to make sure are in order. And also, I wanted to write my book in a way that if I said it, here's the receipt. If I say this, here is the receipt. Because he has a way of making the media believe anything he says, good, bad, right, or wrong. So, this little country girl from two stoplight town in North Carolina telling a story when I know he's gonna say something totally different. I just wanted, when I told my story, to always have supporting evidence for everything I said. And, I've done that in my book. So I feel like, I've told my story. I got tired of reading it in the press and, seeing this this line is right, but this one's wrong. That's not what happened. He's not being honest here. So I'm like, enough of this. I'm going to tell my story the way it happened. Here are the receipts for the way it happened. This is the timeline, and that's why I wrote it that way. So that's me saying I'm taking care of me. I'm going to tell my story, and then I'm going to put a period there, and I'm going to move on.
I hear that. Look, I
Yeah.
applaud it. Seriously. It sometimes
Thank
it's eye-opening when you go through an experience like that. You know, you
Yeah.
discover yourself. And to me, that's the beautiful part. I mean, it's like, like a phoenix. A phoenix turns to ashes and then it blossoms,
Ooh, yes. I feel like I'm back. I'm back. I feel like I've been laying on the couch and I've just purged myself to you. I'm sorry, but this has been my story.
Hey, I mean, look, I'm glad that you're opening up about it. Like I said, getting all of that out, sharing it with other people who, could definitely use this advice, especially right now with what's going on. Give them some time to think about and look at the big picture in itself. If they're currently in, pre-production or post-production, and just taking those steps to evaluate everything as a whole. So I thank you, EW,
Mhm.
for sharing that with our listeners.
Thank you.
So EW, in one of your interviews that you did with One Busy Lady, it mentions Mafietta is not just a movie, it's a movement. So kind of dive into that. What message are you trying to spread through Mafietta?
The main message of Mafietta, because of the transformation that people take in their lives in the book, is that it doesn't matter where you start, it matters where you finish. And I think that's something that's so important for all of us, because what we're doing right now could be something very different than what we were doing 5 to 10 years ago. And I think that once we embrace the fact that we can all change our lives on a dime, and it's okay, and accepting the fact that that is something that we should welcome. We don't have to be the same person we were 10 seconds ago if we don't want to be. And that was what the Mafietta movement was about. And the beautiful part about it, was that I had ladies saying, hey, I want to go back to school. Hey, I want to, change my career path. I want to write. How do I write? What's the first step? And that's what the Mafietta movement was about. It was about encouraging. I had a couple men approach me about writing books and scripts too, but it was really mostly women saying, I want to change my life. Like, thank you for encouraging me to do that. And then it was ladies who wanted to do things I had no clue about. But the fact that they thought enough of me to reach out and tell me, I would help them Google some stuff to say, hey, have you considered this, or take this step, or it's a lot of people I would say, hey, if you want to go back to school, fill out the FAFSA, make some money out of going back to school. So for me, that was the important part about writing Mafietta, just the message that it doesn't matter where you start. I don't care where you start. It matters how you finish. So that was the theme of Mafietta and the theme of the Mafietta movement.
And you're right. It is about where you finish. I mean, because a lot of people, everybody wants to get to the finish line, right? But not everybody wants to put that work in to get there, right. And so I agree. I like that a lot. You are in charge of your own happiness. I tell people that all the time. You can't let other people you can't let your happiness be determined by other people. Because then you're always going to be unhappy. Because people let you down. So I'm excited. Like I'm really happy for you. I'm glad that, things are coming together for you. And that you were able to take this experience and turn it into something positive, So we're going to be wrapping up here shortly, E.W. Brooks. But, what advice can you leave with our listeners today? Whether it's, being an entrepreneur and, overcoming this big, gigantic hurdle that you just encountered with somebody who you thought you could trust because of their name, their, work ethic that from, or even just, getting started in the industry.
My advice to filmmakers would be, I know that as filmmakers and screenwriters, we copyright or we register our scripts. But one thing I learned is that once you finish shooting your script, copyright your finished project. So the world knows it is yours and that you own it. That's important. And then, for writers, for people who want to start writing, I get a lot of questions about, a lot of DMs. I want to write a book. How do I start? And the answer is just write. You know what I mean? Just whatever comes up, just let it come out. And then you can always go back and reorganize and edit. But the first step in writing is always to get that thought out. And, if you have questions, I'm always here to help in any way I can. Just jump over to my website, leave me a question, and I'll always answer, because I know what it's like to be that person yearning for answers. So I always said I wanted to be that person that would teach as I learn, because information when you're trying to climb up the ladder is a little hard to come by sometimes, and I was just shocked at how hard it was to find. So I just wanted to be that person to share it as I found it. So again, I'm glad to reach out, but just get that idea on paper, and reorganize it later. And then just live your dreams. If you got that idea that just keeps burning in your heart, if it's burning in your spirit and it won't go away, that's your thing. If it comes naturally and people come to you for that because they know that that's what you do, that's your thing. You know what I mean? So I just encourage you all to, find that thing, and make that your movement. And don't be afraid to, kind of step away from what's comfortable to find that thing, to do that thing. Because, stepping away from, what I've done traditionally, stepping away from advertising and public affairs to kind of, I'm not saying it didn't help, because, you got to market a book to make a little money off of it. But just to be able to write and be a creative was definitely, more fulfilling. You know what I mean? So just find that thing, y'all. You know what I mean? Find that thing. And then once you do, make sure you're protected.